Hey guys, it's Enrique once again. Sorry if this video came out a week later, but I had a lot of other issues and personal stuff that I needed to deal with. But once again, I'm reviewing another movie. This one is pretty much based on the Predator franchise, and most people are arguing that this might be one of the best Predator movies that we have seen so far. And I tend to agree with that ballpark. So, in that case, we are going to review in this moment Predator Badlands. So, before we get into the review, I should probably mention the history that we have with the Predator franchise. So let's start with the ones that started it all. In this case, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, or as my father calls him, Arnold Spasnaga. And I'm not gonna call him that because I know his name. But regardless, my father calls him Spasnaga, but I'm gonna call him Schwarzenegger. Anyway, Arnold is in this movie alongside with a bunch of cast: Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Sean Levy, and so many others. But this is the story of a paramilitary group in which they are in the Amazons when they are in a mission, when suddenly they are invaded by an alien predator with advanced technology that he uses to hunt down all the members of the military group. This is a mission in which not many can survive, and it's up to Arnold to figure out a way to stop the predator. So that is the premise of the movie. That's what many people regard as one of the best slasher films of all time from the 80s. I personally consider it just a great action movie, and it gives us almost a dream match between the Terminator versus the Predator. So yeah, it is pretty enjoyable for that. And plus, Arnold Schwarzenegger delivers one of his best manly roars. It's just amazing. And yeah, the Predator became pretty much pop culture icon for a lot of years. The design originally was supposed to be like a lizard kind of grasshopper alien, and it was supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme who was in the suit, which would make it in just a dream match. But yeah, eventually they decided to go with the design that we now know today, of a tall guy wearing a lot of skin, technological weapons, and his face who has a lot of fists and teeth, and you know the design of the Predator. But the point is that this was a great movie to show how much of a savage the Predator was. So, what happened after the first movie? Well, we got our sequels, our spin-offs, and our crossovers. So, in this case, let's talk about the ones pretty quickly. Predator 2, I remember watching it on television. It starred Danny Glover now as the main character fighting the Predators. And while it was nice to see another actor getting a crack into the Predator, it was also not as eventful as the other ones. It didn't have that magic that it had, that the first one had all those years ago, and it felt almost like a carbon copy, but this time in the city, which doesn't create too much of the claustrophobic tension. We also have after this the sequels, or in this case not sequels, but actually crossovers with Alien vs Predator. I remember watching this on theaters, and this was my introduction to both the Alien and Predator franchises. I didn't know the directors behind it. I didn't know what was the history, how many movies they made. But I knew that I was having a good time. It was nothing special for the critics. Many people believe that it was just too much of a popcorn film. There was nothing very insightful or very scary. At least not with the others. But many young guys like me grew up with this movie and found it somewhat enjoyable, if not for the idea of seeing the Predator going after the alien xenomorphs. So yeah, I found it pretty enjoyable. Requiem, I don't want to touch it. So the least said about Requiem, the better. But we got another continuation of the Predator franchise, this time directed by Robert Rodriguez. This was called Predators, in which instead of being the alien going to the planet and hunting down the killers, it was actually the Predators sending those higher experts of machinery, of killing, and all that. All those serial killers or people who are experts in killing and all that into a planet in which they have no idea how they are going to get back home, and it leads to figuring out how they are going to escape while also surviving all the predators, which they have different names in this case, but that's either here or there. It was enjoyable, but it had some slow moments and some nonsensical stuff, and well, most of the time it felt like it was trying to be different, but it wasn't as epic or as badass as the others, and some of the casting might have upset the other people. But trust me, that is Shakespeare compared to the Predator. This was directed by Sean Levy, and while I like Sean Levy's work, this was not a good movie. Man, it felt like a parody sometimes. Even worse than Alien vs. Predator Requiem. And yeah, I know I didn't want to mention that film, but trust me, this one it's just like a joke. It's almost like a PG version, but still in an R-rated form. So I don't know what happened, but yeah, it felt like it was trying to be too much of a franchise or trying to be kid friendly and marketable. It was a mess. And one day I might riff on that eventually. But regardless, that was my last Predator movie for a while. And I haven't seen Prey or Killer and Killers now, but eventually after this movie, I might going to see them just to see how they measure to the original. But hey, but yeah, that's pretty much all the movies that I got thus far, and that's all the movies that we got from the Predator franchise. Now we have the one that I argue it's trying to be a little bit better than the others. So in this case, Badlands, it instead of focusing on a group of civilians trying to survive the predator, it is instead focusing on the predator itself and how they see hunting their prey as some sort of a culture, how they manage to get all the weapons, all the equipment, and how they manage to survive in a planet they don't know about, and how much of their lineage or how much of their culture in the alien, in the predator, in that alien-esque predator lineage is trying to be. Like, what do we know about the predators? We don't know very much. We don't even know their names, right? So this is an opportunity for the film to give some lore and to trying to give us characters that we can be invested on. So without further ado, let's talk about what is the plot and what are the characters doing. So let's get into it. The movie is focusing on a predator called Dek, which is belonging to a clan called the Yautja clan, in which he is tasked with the mission to hunt down a beast that has never been hunted before or even beaten, and is located in the planet Ghana. The planet is filled with a lot of dangerous stuff. It's nature and it's basically do or die. It's survive or die is the name of the game. And that is the planet Ghana to a halt. So Dek decides to go there in order to prove himself to his family, especially his father, and hunt down that notorious beast. It comes across an android called Tia, which she's pretty much cut in half, and she says that she knows what creature she is Dek hunting. So they made a deal to work together in order to find out where the creature is, and for Dek to prove himself and hunt down the beast. But along the way, he encounters not only the dangers of the planet, but also the people who are also hunting after the other creature. So this is Hunt or Be Hunted, and Deck is in a mission to prove that he is not only a great predator, but possibly one of the best ones yet. So immediately, I like this premise for a simple reason. It gives us the focus on the predator. We don't see too much of the dialogue. We don't hear the characters too much talking, except for Thea. But I'm getting into it in a moment. But I like that the movie has an atmosphere that is very different from the predators. Now, we have seen jungles, we have seen people being hunted down by the predator, but it's one thing to see the predator itself, how it operates, what kind of creatures they are hunting in order for their own gain or for their own sense of purpose and honor. And this one is no exception. The Yorkshire clan has a distinct way of hunting creatures and other monsters. They see it as a form of honor to see how they become stronger. You know, when they say that the strongest one is the one who does the most dangerous stuff, and this one is no exception. I like that this movie focuses on how Deck is trying to prove himself and trying to figure out how to not only be a great predator, but also a great leader. Because this is not just a mission for him to prove that he is not a weakling, but it's also a mission to prove him and to his late brother that he can be more than just what he is, that he can be a great wolf. And that is one of the metaphors that they are going around in this film. How one person is not enough, or how one member needs to rely on the strength of others in order to hunt down their prey. And even then, how you can relate to the prey in many ways. And that is what I love about this film. It's trying to bring the senses of what happens when we hunt down the creatures and how much we reflect ourselves into the prey that we are hunting. And that is one of the best parts about the Predator movie that we see in this thus far. So now let's talk about the characters. So in this case, since we don't have too many characters, I'm going to focus on only the two main ones that we got in this film. So let's start with Ellie Fanning as both Thea and Tessa. Ellie is pulling double duty in this film as she's portraying as an android, but in this case she's playing two androids. Thea, in this case, is one of the androids from the Weyland Yutari Corporation. You know, the ones from the Alien franchise. And yes, this will make this film a crossover from the Alien and Predator franchises. So I was not surprised by that, but I was surprised on how much they wanted to how much they wanted to put so much of that lore into this film. In this case, how much of the Weyland Corporation is involved in this, and what is the relationship with predators. So yeah, we see that in Thea, how she's an android with a mission of studying the planet alongside her other copy, in this case Tessa, who is also played by Ellie. And basically they are both in the same path, but they have different looks. They have different perspectives. In the case of Thea, she sees more humanity, she sees more kindness and more nobility on the creatures she encounters, especially with Deck. She forms somewhat of a relationship with him, not a romantic one, more like they're both incomplete and they need to each other to go through the mission and go through the planet. And that is one of the brilliance about this. Deck feels incomplete about himself. He doesn't know how to be a great predator, while at the same time Thea is literally cut in half, and she doesn't know how to not only survive on her own, but also how to understand the creatures around her. On the other flip side of that coin, Tessa is more cold, Stone Cold Dead, and basically just focus on the mission. Hunt down the creatures of the planet, especially the predator, for the means of the corporation. She doesn't care about relating to the people or even the predator, and decides to use it as an advantage. Now, one of the things that I was alluding before in the plot is that, yeah, Thea does talk a lot in this film. I'll give credit to Elle Fanning that she has gone a long way from her yesteryears as a child actress. I remember her from the Nutcracker 3D film. Yikes! But this one, it shows how much she has grown as a performer and as an actress. So I like the double duty that she is pulling off here. We see Thea as more playful and more jokey, while Tessa is more cold and basically heartless. And that is something that I enjoy from the performance. But here's the thing. I think Thea should have leveled down her levels of conversation and exposition. I mean, I get it. She's trying to be sarcastic and she's trying to be a different type of android. But I feel like she could have just dialed down a little bit on the joke department or in the sarcastic or one catchphrases, because I feel like it will distract from the plot. And I felt that sometimes. But hey, that is a small nitpick, and honestly, she does a great job at being the guidance or the tool, as Dex says, for him to survive the planet. So now, without further ado, let's talk about the main character of this film and from the entire film. Demetrius Schuster plays Dek, the predator from the Yukta clan. The Jakja clan. So this is a different performance. I don't know very much about the actor. For what I understand, he is an Samoan Australian actor who has been in lesser films, and this is his biggest blockbuster film thus far. And I have to say, he impressed me. But most of the time, I felt like he was not in the suit. I felt like we see the predator in the performance. And that's what I'm focusing in on this and review. Dek is basically a young, weak member of the Yaksha clan. He has to prove himself to his brother and his father, especially his father, because he feels like he sees him as a weakling and he wants to destroy him. And basically, the father of Dek wants to kill him because he doesn't want weaklings in his family or in his clan as well. So it's a mission for Dek to not only prove himself to his father, but also to the memory of his brother who died at the hands of his father. So in this case, Dek goes through hell and high water to find the creature, to hunt it down, and to figure out how to escape the planet. And that's something that I really enjoy from this performance. Dek is not like your typical predator that knows the name of the game. He knows what he has to do. Sometimes Dek is not sure of the planet he encounters, and it's good to see the perspective of the predator when he faces an unknown planet and doesn't know how to deal with it, especially with the other threats, not only from the planet, from the outside world as well. Like I said, the Weidung Yutani Corporation is after the same creature that Dek is hunting, and it puts him in a cross path in which he has to figure out what's best for the hunt and what's best for himself as well. Whether he has to do things alone or whether he has to rely on other people for help. And that is the beauty of this film and to this performance to an extent. Dek is an unexperienced predator that eventually becomes one of the great ones in the end. And that's what I like to see. The transformation from weak to strong. Now let's talk about production design and effects. This one is pretty much the effects from department, but it has also a lot of practical moments. We see a lot of practical effects when it comes to the stage. We see that they shot in real jungles, similar to what they used to do for the other films. We see the design of the predators. It is more distinct and helps distinguish the predators from one another. We see the ones who are big, the ones who are small, the ones who are leaders, who are weaklings. We see a distinct design for Deck in this case. He's skinny, but at the same time he has a brown skin. He has a different sort of hair when it comes to predators. His ship is a different design, and I have to say, it does have some of a Star Wars-esque kind of design. So, but I had to admit it was enjoyable. We also see the designs of the creatures from the jungle, the ones who are in the planet Gena, some of the designs for the flowers, the trees, the weeds, everything. It has a distinct look and different aesthetics than we are used to look at any Predator film. I also like the aesthetics of the Weyland Yutani Corporation, especially from the androids. It has a distinct look. The majority of the film we see the planet populated by by androids from this corporation, so it's nice to see. And I also have to applaud the effects from the design of Thea and Tessa because they both look different. Thea is more with a ball cap in her head, while Tessa is more all white and her eye design is different. So I deeply appreciated that. I also enjoy the camera look because they feel like they are in the same room, and I have to say they really look distinct from one another. The action sequences there basically is all about the hunt. So all I can do is boil down one of my favorite scenes. Basically, the ones at the beginning when we see Deck proving himself to his brother. I also enjoy the chase scenes when he has to hunt down some of the creatures of the planet in order to eat or to survive. I also like the final battle where we see Deck finally using all the skills that he acquired throughout the film and using it against his enemies. So yeah, I definitely enjoy about that in the film. And yeah, it was one of my favorite sequences of all time. So, not much to say in the end, but all I can say at this point is that Predator Badlands is not only distinct from the other Predators, but it has its unique look, it has its unique aesthetics, themes, and ideas. I like the idea that Deck is trying to be more of a lone wolf, only to realize that the strength that he has is relying not only on his weapons, but also in the knowledge of the planet and the creatures he comes across with. It's not necessarily trying to be a PG, the type that we saw in the Predator movie with Sean Levy, but it's trying to be more grounded, more, back to basics, but also introducing more layers and more lore to the Predator franchise. And at the end of the day, that's all I ask for. And I have to say, I haven't seen Prey or Predator Killer or Killers, but I have to see them just to see how they handle. But I gotta say, this has been a great year for the Predators to be put into media. I mean, back then, after the Predator, it was bad and nobody wanted to touch that franchise anymore. But after the Disney buyout, and regardless of what we think about the Disney buyout and how they handle some of the properties, I have to say, the Predator got the most benefits because it allows us to see more of the creatures, more of the clans, and more how they distinct from one another. And at the end of the day, as a Predator fan myself, it's honestly my favorite ones thus far. If I had to rank it among the Predator movies that I've seen, I would put it number two, just behind the original one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That is still a classic, don't get me wrong. But I have to say that this one comes a close second with, let's say, Predator 2 as the third one, the Predators in fourth category, and the Predator at last. That is going to change when I see Prey and Killer and Killers, but thus far I enjoy it for what I've seen thus far. But yeah, I highly recommend it. It's on theaters right now. I suggest you watch it if you can. And yeah, just have a good time watching this Predator film. I really did. So yeah, that's it for the review today. Nothing much, but I hope to see you guys next week as we start our Christmas Eve. So until then, I'm Ben Enrique, and I'll see you next time. Peace.